I didn't want to do this, but we've got to do it. Do you know what was 7 years ago today?
Is it sport-related?
No, it's Brexit. Can you believe that it's 7 years ago today and we haven't even got it done yet?
I mean, I can believe that we haven't got it done because we live in the United Kingdom and nothing gets done on time. It does seem to have sort of flown by, and at the same time, I have kind of aged quite a lot.
I have. From Article 50 to oven-ready deals, hard borders, one too many elections. Should we have another discussion about it? Is it worth it? Will it work? Was it done properly? Why did we bring it in the first place? Joining me now are two titans of the Brexit debate, Remainer Femi and former MEP Steven Woolfe. Benedict is here as well. Gentlemen, good morning. Let's start with you, Steven Woolfe. The British public, Femi won't like this, 52% of them voted for it. He's going to tell me, but they didn't know the truth. Truth of the fact is the British public voted for it. We haven't actually done it yet, have we?
Oh, God, no. We've nowhere near done it. The only thing that we've ever done is left the European institutions. We're still paying money over to the European Union. We formed an organisation in the UK Parliament made of former MEPs, predominantly, who were Remainers, who now linked to try and join EU regulation. In the City of London, we've got financial regulations still being taught by the European Parliament. We've got a border with the Northern Ireland that's never been changed, that allows them, i.e. the European Union, to take control of part of our sovereignty. We've not taken back control of immigration completely, although we have an element of being able to have at least the fairness of having everybody in the world being able to come to the country equally than we did before. So in many, many respects, whether we look at trade, whether we look at the options that were there available for people like me who supported this, it's just not happened. And in any ways, I'll tell you this story, Jeremy. On the night I was in Manchester at the Count, when we were succeeded, I called up somebody in the European Parliament who was a very close friend. It was actually someone in the European Parliament who supported Britain leaving. And she said to me, Stephen, don't you enjoy the moment right now, because we have just opened Operation Return the UK. So they will then spend the next year making sure Britain returns by making it as difficult or hard as possible. Let's take
that point, Femi. 7 years to the day that 52% of the British electorate voted to leave the Union. Critics will say it's all is not well. Critics will say it doesn't work. Other people will say we haven't gone far enough. What's your take on this, my friend?
So yeah, let's get to the heart of how Brexit has gone wrong, which clearly Stephen agrees with. We're both academics here. You studied law, Stephen. So did I. Let's take the politics out of it, take the economics out of it. We don't talk about sovereignty or economics or European solidarity. Let's just go with what was the question that we were asked in 2016. Leave the EU versus remain in the EU. What is that? What is the topic of that? What is that about? That's obviously about international relations. What is the currency of international relations? Treaties. So on the Remain side, you had the treaties of the European Union, the treaties that were signed by those 20 to 28 countries at the time. And on the Leave side, what was the treaty on the other side? What was the treaty on the other side? Can anybody tell me? No, because it hadn't been negotiated yet. We didn't negotiate it until 3 years later, arguably 5 years later, with the actual trade agreement. So Leavers, people who voted in 2016, it was literally impossible to know what you were voting for in 2016, which is why we had 3 years of Brexit people, Brexit supporters, arguing amongst each other over those 3 years. The Brexit Party rejected Boris Johnson's deal. Nigel Farage, your former boss, he said that given a choice between Boris Johnson's deal and Remain wins that referendum and wins it every single time. The DUP, another part of 52%, didn't want that deal. And yet the problem was, all of you claim to want the same thing. There were people who wanted no deal, as your party wanted, Stephen. There were people who wanted a simple free trade deal. There were people who wanted to be still in the single market. You didn't want the same thing, whereas all the 16 million people who voted to remain all voted for the same treaty.
Right, stay there, Femi. Benedict Spence?
Yeah, he's not wrong. This is an important thing, I think, that needs to be recognised, is that, the majority of people voted to be outside of the European Union, but there was never a consensus necessarily on what that would be. I know a lot of people would say, well, actually, there is a consensus just saying out. But Femi's right, it is a complex process, and different strands of Brexiteerism, if you like, had different visions for the future. You look at the Labour Party, for example, there's a very long, strong history of being anti-European, because that's how you would achieve socialism. You can't really do it inside the European Union in the way that many socialists would like. That's where Jeremy Corbyn's Euroscepticism came from, for example. On the other hand, you have those who wanted Singapore and Thames, the sort of, rarefied free marketeerism. And actually, I don't think we ever had a discussion, proper discussion, certainly not a mature discussion, about what the future after Brexit would look like. We had Theresa May, who was not a Brexiteer, thinking that this would appease her party and that she could please all sides, rushing into something without ever really sitting down and saying, well, this is what we'll go to Europe with, and this is what we'll discuss. It was rushed. I
do think, Stephen, that both Femi and Benedict have a point in that. I will always say, democratically 52% voted. However, I will say this. There was this sort of sweep towards yes or no. We can talk about detail on both sides. Is the fact that this hasn't been done as we were promised, because as Femi and Benedict imply, there wasn't really a plan, right? Or is it because, as you implied, the people who lost out, the Europeans, whatever, will do anything they can to stop this in its tracks? Steven Woolfe?
Well, look, it's going to be a rare moment for me to actually agree with Femi on one aspect, and that is that there was no cohesive and unified plan between the different strands of Brexiteers, just as there are those within the European Union who want to see the European Union move into one nation state, and others think that they can have this conglomeration that works now. The only thing that I disagree is absolutely everybody agrees in the Brexit camp is that we wanted to leave the European Union to have control of our government, the laws, and the way that we move forward, run by the British people through the British Parliament. Now, what that then means, as Femi has quite rightly said, is what our relationship with other countries, including the European Union then, is open to debate, is open to those strands of different political parties and ideas that could come to a way forward, and that includes the way that we negotiated deals in the future. But one thing that was absolutely made clear to me during the negotiations and talks that I had with Michel Barnier on a regular basis, I'd meet him once a month throughout the whole process, right up to 2019, to many in the European Parliament, is that there was an operation to try and make Brexit as difficult and awkward as possible, and to support those in the British elite who were really disappointed and angry.
Right, yeah. This is actually a very salient point. Femi, fill in Newcastle. We left 7 years ago and the elites have punished us every day since. They hate the fact we challenged their authority. Femi?
Yeah, well, you like to make this point about the elite being the people who oppose Brexit. As of right now, as you're well aware, all the polls show that the majority of people think Brexit is a mistake, and in fact, working class people, they've done this particular poll. Working class people on whole oppose Brexit now, because that's how badly it's gone. Working class people no longer support Brexit. You say that the one thing that people on the Brexit side were agreed with was this idea of sovereignty, of controlling our government. You can't add in clauses like that. You can't just, because you can't pick and choose which promises count in terms of the Brexit mandate. Because some people might say, no, we voted to have a better NHS. We voted to have a better trade deal with the EU. We voted to have X, Y, Z. You are the one adding that. We weren't asked the question, do you want to control your government? We were asked the question, do you want to leave the EU?
Gentlemen, you're going to hate me, right? You are genuinely going to hate me, okay? I have to move on. This is a debate, right, that will roll on. This is not going anywhere. Whatever side of the argument you're at with Brexit, it was voted in, it hasn't been done. There are people who now don't agree with it. And Femi and Stephen and Benedict will keep arguing the toss for as long as they are asked to do so.